Hello, everybody, and welcome to DC Direct. I'm Lionel Donovan. Here we try to talk about some of the bigger stories in the news, but we want to hear from you. So please follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at TRT World, and use the hashtag DC Direct to be a part of the conversation. In today's show, we're talking about the reactions from the Mueller report. There it is. After over 2 years, Robert Mueller has finally released the results of the investigation into Russia's meddling in the 2016 presidential elections and alleged collusion by the Trump campaign. A redacted version of the report was released to the public, but even still, it's almost 500 pages long. This report has captured the public's imagination, but now that it's out, is it worth all the hype? And how do young people, many of whom have watched the investigation play out on social media, feel about the report? And how does it shape their view on politics? Let's get out of this office and find out. First off, did you get a chance to go through the report?
I got about halfway through it, to be honest.
What do you think of the report, or the parts that you went through?
So it's clear from the report that the Trump administration or the Trump campaign did not commit conspiracy. However, I think that there's a good case to be made that there was coordination or willing coordination from the Trump campaign from the Russians. The Mueller report left that up to Congress to decide. But in my opinion, I think it's clear if it were anyone else besides the President of the United States, that would be a clear charge of obstruction.
Realistically, the results were something that I was anticipating. This whole time, the Democrats have been using the Mueller report as a way to deflect from the progress that the administration has been making in its first 2 years. I think for a long time, this was really just a reaction on the Democrats' part to the negative outcome in their minds to the election. And they realized that it wasn't the result that they wanted. So they used the Mueller investigation as a way to vilify this president, when realistically, there was very little evidence that resulted from this 2 years of investigation and millions of taxpayer dollars.
I didn't know any of these details, but now we understand that George Papadopoulos was having contacts with a foreign professor, that Paul Manafort was giving polling data to Russian, that Carter Page was setting up meetings with Trump and Putin, and Roger Stone and Jerome Corsi knew exactly when these WikiLeaks documents were going to come out. So it was important to uncover all these facts, but what was the end result? We didn't get anywhere that was productive for the party with it. So that's where the disappointment sets in.
How do you think young people reacted to this report?
There was this idea that the Mueller report was going to be this sensational splash that was going to cure us of the Trump presidency. And that's just not the way that things work. And I think that while young people, we bring a lot of excitement and a lot of energy to the political process, that we still have things to learn.
People are kind of more interested in the tabloid kind of headline scandals, especially in the age of social media. A lot of young people, they kind of have a vendetta against Donald Trump and this administration, but they aren't having broader discussions about how the fact that there was no conspiracy or collusion is good news for the United States and our institutions as a whole. So I think that the focus should somewhat pivot more in that direction.
The problem with social media and the blessing of it is that you get information as quick as it's available. So people were consistently on their feed, consumed with what was going on, picking up details, seeing who's indicted, seeing who's being interviewed, but it built up expectations that could never be fulfilled with the end result that we saw. So, benefit, blessing, curse, social media is all of that.
The fact that the investigation happened, I think, was based on a lack of evidence and essentially warrantless claims. But I understand the mindset that it came from, which is, again, wanting to promote that integrity in our government. I think that now that it's done, though, we need to accept the results and move forward.
Do you think this trend is going to, you think it's going to get better, or do you think it might get worse because, social media is, becoming more and more part of people's lives now? Young people now, there are people now that have grown up with Twitter and Facebook and can't literally can't imagine a life without it.
I think this is going to be a positive trend for information, but a negative one for politics. Because if we think about the opportunities for previous administrations or previous opposing parties of a president to further a narrative the way that the Democrats have with President Trump, the previous citizens of the United States, again, had to just rely on those one or two narratives that were being pushed by the press corps. And the Democrats in this situation wouldn't have the same support that they do now for, say, these calls of impeachment, because the ability to spin that narrative out of a report that really didn't have any conclusive findings just wouldn't be there.
I think the diversification of media in general is good for transparency. You can read the whole Mueller report on your cell phone, right? I don't think that was fully possible obviously during the Watergate scandal or even in more recent scandals. But of course, the other thing is people can kind of pick their outlets really easily. They can pick their narrative. I think young people are becoming more intelligent about the way they consume media. With the uptick in engagement with alternative news websites, you've also had a more engagement with fact-checking websites. So there's a boom in those kinds of resources, which I think is good.
What do you think young people should learn from the Mueller report?
Ultimately, we need to get out and vote. As a demographic, people aged 35 and under are the smallest voting demographic. If you look at people 18 to 24, it's just below 1% in many jurisdictions, the number of registered voters who turn out. We, as a numerical demographic, are the largest, the millennial demographic. We have more of us than there are baby boomers who are registered voters. So we need to show that power and become a respected demographic so that politicians bend to our needs and demands, and not just folks who happen to turn up more than us but don't have the numbers we have.
Well, that's our time. Thanks so much for watching this episode of DC Direct. And please follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at TRT World. And use the hashtag DC Direct to let us know what you think about the Mueller report. Until next time, I'm Lionel Donovan.